Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
With the tricks and McTominay! Have you ever seen anything like that on the biggest stage of all? Oh, that looked like it might well have been inside the box there as he marches back onto the pitch and gives the penalty. Denmark level. Comes all the way through. Shankland from Ferguson's corner, and that could be the moment of history. Tierney is only half away. Dorgu 2-2. Back in it comes. Ferguson's header given away, but it breaks to Tierney. McLean, he's going to shoot. Is that going in? That's unbelievable! I've never seen anything quite as incredible and dramatic as Kenny McLean. They are history makers.
Well, what else could we start with this week, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. We had to start with that. There was nothing else. It's the biggest story of the week, and it does appertain to Scotland. And if you say there's nothing about politics and sport, you'd be absolutely wrong. There's everything about politics and everything about sport. We're all in a buzz and we're all in a high. Eva, how did it make you feel?
Oh, there were several standout moments when McTominay scored and then ran over, and you could lip read him saying, "Where's my mum?"
Because my mum.
His mum. It was absolutely fantastic. But before the match started, see all the children that were out there on the pitch singing "Flower of Scotland." I was crying watching them, especially when they were all singing about, rise and be a nation again. And I wish so much that the Scottish nation were united behind a real drive towards independence for the sake of everybody in the country, and so that these wee tots that were there could actually get the opportunities to realise their own potential. That's what I hope it means for people to see, that when there is a will and there's determination and you keep fighting back and you're confident and you play as a real team. Team Scotland did the job the other night, but politically we need the team that unites Scotland to do the job for the country, and then when we do, it'll feel like we're bringing the World Cup home day in and day out.
Absolutely. I mean, people say there's no, it's sport, it's not politics, but I found it quite, I was quite upset at some, the people who talk down Scotland every day of the week suddenly wanted the reflected glory, Lloyd. But here's the thing, Scotland managed that with no interference from London or Westminster. We did that on our own. We stand alone. We have an independent football and we can compete with the world, which we've just proven we can do. You're on mute.
That's £1 or €1. No, it was absolutely fantastic. My same sentiments as Eva. We've got a great chance in May of next year to capitalise on what the team did during the week and send the Scottish national team representing an independent Scotland after the election in May of 2026. So they'd be going there as the representatives of an independent country rather than a dependent country. That would be absolutely magnificent, and everybody knows how to do that. It's a vote for Liberate Scotland. But interesting, in the same week, if politics and football don't mix, we are very lucky. We've got a national football team, though we don't have statehood. The Welsh have got a national football team, they don't have statehood. But what happened, very interestingly, in both Catalonia and the Basque Country just last week was the Basque team played against Palestine in a friendly in Bilbao in front of 55,000 people. The Catalan national team, also not recognised internationally as the Basques are not recognised, they played the Palestinian team in front of 38,000 people. And the following night, the Spanish national team, playing a World Cup qualifying game, played Turkey in front of 30,000 people. Now, that tells you that there's countries out there who want to be like us. They want to be like us in terms of sport, but they want to be like us in terms of politics, and that's achieving our independence. And that's why international solidarity through sport is so, so important. It's why the Tartan Army does such a great job in terms of public relations for us as a nation when it goes travelling around the world, as do the rugby fans as well. And it's important. It's very important. But what, as I said at the beginning, what could be better than for those guys to get on the plane to head to the United States, Canada, or Mexico next year, knowing that they're representing a country in the early days of its independence? That would be our gift from the people of this country to them for the gift that they gave us on Tuesday night.
Absolutely, because here's the fact. I mean, I know they talk about 90-minute nationalist, Alan, but I think if we'd had a referendum this week or a plebiscite election, we would be negotiating the secession of Scotland from the Union. Scotland's buzzing at the moment.
Definitely, and so we should be. It's been a long time in the waiting, I've got to say that. Nearly 30 years. But it was funny that as soon as the final whistle had gone, the amount of unionists that jumped on the bandwagon, saying how wonderful it was for Scotland. Was that not a wee bit political? Because you've been running down Scotland for years before that. You're always telling people we're too wee, too poor, and too stupid. Well, the boys in blue on Tuesday night showed you what a united Scotland is all about. They took the ball from the very start and they put their heart and soul into that game. And I don't know about anybody else, but did you hear the rendition of the Flower of Scotland?
Oh. The
hairs on the back of my neck were just standing right up. It was so much pride. And every single one of the players felt that. But what was interesting was 3 of the goal scorers, some of the best goals I've ever seen in any game at all in the one game. And Scotland at the best. It's never seen Scotland score goals like that before in my life. But the three of the goals were scored by substitutes. And again, it is a metaphor for politics. Because what we are needing in Scottish politics is to substitute those who are tired and without any new ideas to be replaced on the field of play by those who are enthusiastic, fresh legs, great ideas to come, and we will then soon get our independence. And those substitutions, I would suggest, would be Liberate Scotland.
Well, you would, wouldn't you? And I would agree with you. I mean, there are so many metaphors we can pull out of this, Eva. In fact, Techie, can you show us the one of the Louvre, the picture of in the Louvre beside the Mona Lisa? It's up already. There you go. Scott McTominay's in the Louvre. Well, not really, but I think it's a great idea. But there are so many metaphors and analogies, etc., we can do from this, Eva. As you talked of in our first comment, unity, people fighting for the one purpose. We may be a small country with a small nation, but when we unite, we can achieve so much.
Well, waiting for the game to start the other night at the time felt like the night before the referendum. You knew that there was everything to play for. It would go one way or it would go the other. And sitting in Clackmannanshire, you know, probably those of us here that favoured independence then and we want it so desperately now, need a chance to live down the ignominy of being the first place to announce that Scotland had voted no. And I felt as the game developed that you could feel the country really buzzing, as Alan has said. And I really hope that what it means for the people of Scotland is that they can understand, and we as a nation can understand, that when we do fight together with unity of purpose for a common goal, we can actually deliver it. It does not have to be another set of circumstances where we snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, because I think that's what some of us thought was going to happen the other night, particularly when Denmark scored a couple of times and you went from being elated to your heart was in your boots again. And the feeling at the end, it was good enough when the third goal went in, but when the fourth one went in, you thought you'd won the jackpot in the lottery and Euro millions, you know, a million times over. That's what national pride is all about. It's having the ability to do what Alex Salmond taught the people of Scotland to do. And I will recall others in history, particularly William Wallace and Robert the Bruce, because they knew the value of the support of the small folk. Alex Salmond built his career persuading the small folk that we have to stick together for the common good. And so I hope there is a metaphor in there politically that those in the independence movement, which is currently so fractured, understand, as I said at the beginning, that we need to play as a team. You know, and we do need substitutes, as Alan said, but what we need are people who are driven to win for Scotland, to walk tall for Scotland, to put the hearts and the minds and the backbones into doing the very best that we can for our country, so that we're not actually delivering footballing victories or World Cup victories. What we begin to deliver is the opportunity for everybody in our country to live a happy, comfortable life. And we're not asking for the sun and the moon and the stars. We're only saying that the people of Scotland deserve the right to use their own resources for their own sakes, so that we have people who live in safe, warm homes. We don't have 35,000 people on a homeless list and rising. We have a national energy company so that we're not paying the highest energy prices in the world. We should be paying the lowest, so that we revamp our education and NHS systems as we need to do, so that we properly fund all public services. And had we the ability to use our resources for our own sake, that's exactly what we would do. But we won't do it with a fractured team where the team are running in opposite directions, where in essence you've got John Swinney, instead of shooting for goal, he's passing the ball back so that the folk behind him in front of his own goal can carry on kicking it from one to the other and never lose possession to give it to the strikers or the left backs or the right backs who are up front, who are determined to go for goal. So if you want a footballing analogy, I would say that Liberate Scotland and to an extent Alba, they're the folk that should have the ball at their feet, because at the moment, if you let the SNP maintain possession of the ball, Scotland is going to stay in the wrong half and never have the opportunity to score the way that we should.
Oh, that's true. But we get it every day. One of the things is that broadcasting and the media was retained, when everything else has been devolved, Lloyd. And that was so they could control that message. And the message all the time is put you down, put you down, put you down, too weak, too poor, too stupid, too weak, too poor, too stupid. But this kind of confidence, this gives the Scottish people a bit of confidence. And that is dangerous for the Union, because a confident Scottish nation is scary for the Union.
Of that, there's no question. And the same goes for the Irish, same goes for the Welsh. I think it's sometimes dangerous for us to overplay this. But the sense of national unity that you get when you have success with the national football team, or the success of Andy Murray, or the success of the rugby team, or the success of the curling team, there are these moments when the people come together, and they come together in something which they know is an assertion of their own nationality, their own nationhood, and the unity of our society. The problem in the past has always been that politicians never really exploit that. And even this week, the First Minister could have made any number of different statements, but basically just saying, well done, lads, that was very good, really didn't cut it for most folk. It was a typical John Swinney kind of response to the situation. I think the great opportunity would have been for him to say more or less what you just said, Roddy, which is, see that even in terms of football, we're not too poor, we're not too wee, and we're not too stupid. And we've just proved that. That would have been the statement and the action of of a statesman seeking to create statehood for our country. And unfortunately, he couldn't rise to the occasion. So it's going to be down to others to rise to that occasion. But what we understand very clearly from the response right across the country, including those who are less than ambitious for the country, shall we say, is that they felt that sense of national pride as well. What we have to do is to start to convince people that the feeling of national pride is nothing, absolutely nothing to be guilty about. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's in actual fact what all normal countries across the world and the peoples of those countries actually feel about their own country. It's not a bad thing to be proud of your own country. It's not a bad thing in any way to wish the best for your country. Unfortunately, so long as we remain part of the Union, we can't make that next step forward. And what I hope comes from this is that we recognise that the team, having made that great step forward after nearly 30 years, that we, I mean, it's interesting, 1998, the year before the creation of the Scottish Parliament, was the last time we were in a World Cup. And here we are, 26 years after the creation of the Scottish Parliament, we're going to another World Cup. And as I said earlier, we have to find a way to actually tie in the emotion, because there are those who would say that in normal politics, there's no place for emotion. But the big difference is when you're part of a movement for national independence, emotion is an essential part of it. And the football game the other night proved that emotion is an essential part of it. Those of us who were on the ground in 2014 during the referendum know very well that a huge number of votes were cast entirely and completely on an emotional basis. But people felt that emotion was the right emotion. It was an emotion for the future. It was an emotion which took into account the future generations. We have to find the politicians, and we have to find a way to get people to understand that the emotion that we produce when we achieve great things like we did on Tuesday night at Hampden, that emotion has to be tied into the political campaign as well. And everybody has to get behind that. Because when you release that emotion in people, that's when people who are less than the champions of independence, when the doubt begins to become the doubt grows in their minds. Because the difficulty for so many people, a unionist perspective, is this duality of existence that they have, whereby they are of the Union, they are British, but then what emotion did they feel on Tuesday night? And that emotion erodes that support for the Union. And as a result of that, you can't diminish it, but you can't make too much of it. But what you have to understand is you cannot take the emotion out of sport, and you can't take the emotion out of politics when you're talking about the movement for national independence and national liberation. And it's important that particularly those who champion the cause of independence recognise that and put it front and centre along with all the arguments on the economy, on society, and on the future. But without the emotion, it will all be hollow. So let's tap into that emotion. And again, repeat what I said in the beginning. The opportunity exists in May 2026 for us to take the great leap forward. So we're sending that team, that squad, to North America as representing a country on the brink of independence. The opportunity is there for us. Yeah.
Be wonderful. I would do. Yes. I have a dream. Oh, how's that for a segue? The people, I go back to Al, some people watching just now the podcast, we might get some comments below saying, oh, it's football, don't conflate them together. But in Scotland, per head of population, more people on a Saturday go to a football match than any other country in the world. So it is very important to the psyche of the Scots. And that did flow out on Tuesday night. And it is right, as your colleagues have said, that we tap into that. And remember, there's another big match coming up in May. We've got to win that one as well. It's a final, and it's one that we've got to win.
Yeah, I mean, if you're saying that sport has nothing to do with politics, then why has there been this carry on about women having men playing in their sports? That was very political, because it was politics that decided that men should be allowed to play in women's sports, despite the fact that we created women's sports specifically to get men out of it. So that was a very political decision. But also tell me, why are we as Scots paying millions of pounds into funding stadiums in England, football stadiums in England, to give them better training facilities when our youngsters are struggling to get decent training in our country? We are paying for the English to do that. That's politics. And here's a very, very important one. If Reform win in 2029, there will be no Scottish national football team. There will be no Welsh national football team. And there will be no Northern Irish football team. Because Reform has made it quite clear they want to do away with all the nation's individual sports. They want a British team representing the country at every level, at every sport. So that's what's going to happen. Reform will remove every single football team except for what will effectively be the English team. Because let's face it, that's who they're going to be picking from in a British team. But there's also the Unionists, who again coming out the woodwork to support Scotland, saying that we should be honouring Steve Clarke with an honour, a knighthood. Why should we honour one of our national heroes with a foreign award? And why are we only going to be offering it to one individual? That was a team sport. So why don't we as Scotland say to the entire team, you, every one of you, now have the freedom of the city you were born in as recognition to your dedication to Scotland? I'm sure that is a more fitting award for any Scotsman who plays for their country. But in 2026, that could be an amazing year. We could, on 7th of May, 2026, become an independent nation. Then we can send a message to the Scottish football team heading to America. Send back the World Cup to the country football was born. Because football was born in Scotland, nowhere else. So don't ever forget that. So 2026, Scotland independent and World Cup coming to Hampden.
Fabulous. We can but dream. Two things, we talked about that, Liberty. Techie, can you stick up the fundraiser? It's next Friday. I'll be there myself, me and Mrs. McLeod will be paying a visit, the fundraiser in the King Robert Hotel in Stirling there. And this is all the money raised at this will go towards making our independence happen. It'll be helping fund the Liberate Scotland candidates. More on that later, but if you look running along the bottom, you can get in touch, buy a couple of tickets, come along, meet the crew, all the Prism crew will be there as well, and we'll look forward to seeing you. But on that very topic of what we need to do, next week's the budget, Eva. And it came out this week that Keir Starmer, and I think we've got a headline for it, Techie, refused to meet with John. John Swinney went cap in hand again. He wanted to speak to him about what he could do for the budget for Scotland, and he went cap in hand. And Keir Starmer and his team refused to speak to the underling from the colony. When is John Swinney going to learn? We don't ask these people. We demand. We get out. Stop going cap in hand. You're embarrassing us. Just as the football team gave us pride and confidence, he goes and throws it away by begging.
I think what Alan actually just said there, or he meant to say, was that next year football's coming home. And there would be a lesson there for John Swinney. He's needing to tell his MPs in Westminster to come home, and he's needing to create that independence convention that I speak about every week, because it's still not turned up, even although Keith Brown said at the SNP conference that it was going to be happening that weekend. So the job that John Swinney has is supposed to be to deliver independence for our country, not to continue to beg to Westminster for the return of a fraction of the revenue that Scotland creates for and sends to Westminster's coffers. This snub to him, though, is no surprise. It's just one in a long and ever increasing line. And the reason why Starmer and his predecessors are able to bat off any pleas that come from the SNP and from the Scottish Government is because they're not afraid from them. Westminster governments and the occupants of number 10 do not fear the current leadership of the SNP. They laugh at them. They deride them. You see that in Westminster most weeks. And you hear questions and answers at Scottish questions or at Prime Minister's questions, which are frankly embarrassing, and they're designed simply and solely to make a fool of the SNP and thereby make a fool of the Scottish independence movement. And the way that John Swinney can counter all of that overnight with literally a stroke of a pen is to bring about the unity of the movement and to say that what the SNP stand for, in fact, is what Liberate Scotland stands for, which is independence, nothing less. Now, he's not done it yet, and for the life of me, I cannot understand why it is that his party has a policy of looking for a majority next year in Holyrood to then give them what he describes as the legitimate right to ask for another referendum. If he cannot even get a pre-budget meeting with the Prime Minister, what on earth does he think makes him believe that he's going to get a hearing of any nature regarding a plea for another referendum? It is pointless, it is silly, it advances Scotland's position not a jot. It probably takes it backwards, whereby instead of scoring for Scotland, he's scoring own goals every time he makes an approach to Westminster. So if we want to see realism within our movement, that realism starts with the SNP admitting what it is that they want. Now, I saw a leaflet or a letter or something sent out today, or I saw it today rather, and it was from Keith Brown. And he was asking people in this constituency where I live, Clackmannanshire and Dunblane, to tell him what their priorities were. And there were a lot of boxes to tick on the priorities. You can imagine what they were. Well, guess which one wasn't there? It was down
Let me guess.
Long list. How do you feel about independence? What do you think about Scotland back in the EU? That should have been number one. It should have been the headline. It should have said, I'm standing for independence, and it should have narrated what the plan for independence was going to be. And until the SNP do that, they have no place in a united movement if their leadership does not constantly promote independence with a route map to independence first and foremost, because there's nothing else in the country that can be fixed or changed or made as good as it can possibly be unless and until we've got the economic levers that come only with independence. And Scotland is run by a government comprising people with imagination, ability, technical experience, and who have the humility to admit when they are wrong. And I'm saying that particularly in relation to the ongoing court actions relative to the Scottish Prison Service, which I think we'll go into later. But as it is just now, John Swinney will get nowhere with Westminster, nowhere with number 10, until he creates a force of Scots who are Democrats, but who are determined and united and present a very strong major front in opposition to Westminster, as opposed to toadying to them, because at the moment, that's all they seem capable of doing.
Correct. Instead of being cap in hand, Lloyd, it's just Eva's alluded to there and said, if on Wednesday, the day after that fantastic victory, John Swinney had issued some kind of declaration saying, I have recalled all my members of Parliament. There is no point in them down in that Parliament. It's a waste of time. They're coming home to prepare for the Constitutional Convention. I'm calling a meeting of all pro-independence parties and organisations. We're going to have an agreed policy for the 26th, and we're going for independence. We're not waiting. That would have risen the SNP in the polls, I would suggest, by 10 to 12 points. We would be on the march. Everything would be set in place for May.
Yes, but we know that that's really not, it's not on the menu. It's not on John's menu card at all. This is about, the next few months are about protecting the managed decline of the Scottish National Party and the Scottish National Movement. Now, if we'd had real politics this week, when we had the announcement about the closure of the ethylene plant at Mossmorn, when you combine that with the closure of the plastics division in Grangemouth, there's two big sticks to beat the British with and to stand up for your country with, because both of these events are entirely preventable if the British government wants to prevent them. The situation with the ethylene plant at Mossmorn is that we've got a taxation regime whereby to make ethylene in Fife for the use of the people of Fife, Scotland, or the rest of the United Kingdom, you actually pay more tax than you do if you ship it in from somewhere else, which is why the British government gave the ex-owner of Grangemouth, Jim Radcliffe, all that money to build an ethylene plant in Belgium. Now, if you want a meeting with Rachel Reeves about the budget, or you want a meeting with Starmer about the budget, you should have been talking to them about this, the taxation, the fact that two of the really most important plants in Scotland, us being an oil-producing country, of course, and a gas-producing country, two of the most important elements of that industrial infrastructure are effectively being made non-productive and non-competitive by a taxation regime created by the British government. Now, to anyone in their right mind, why would, when that's pointed out to them, why wouldn't the British government change that? And if they didn't change it, isn't it the biggest stick you've got to beat them with? Is it not yet another of these situations which should be made use of to increase support for independence by saying, we are being driven out of the market by the British government's actions, because that's what's happening. Now, that is something that would stir the people in the same way as Scotland's oil did in the 1970s. And that's another campaign that we need to start getting back to, but we can't get back to because the current Scottish government has bought in to the nonsense that is net zero. This whole thing, this whole circumstance, for us as an oil-producing country, as a gas-producing country, as an ethylene-producing country, as an aviation fuel-producing country, every action of net zero mitigates against our development, our industrial development. Now, why is it, how is it that the leader of the Scottish National Party, the First Minister of Scotland, cannot stand up and say that this effectively is driving our industry into the ground, stealing the futures of our children, stealing the futures of future generations? Now, it's fairly simple stuff because it's right there in front of your face. But what are we getting? Which is, I might be sounding, I know I'm sounding negative because I am negative, because I'm angry. Because we have that joyous event on Tuesday night created by 11 men kicking a bit of leather about. Meanwhile, hundreds, if not thousands of people are having their lives ruined by the inaction of a First Minister who could be inspiring the people to rise up and make us an independent country in May of next year, but is choosing not to. Instead, he's putting out press releases complaining about the fact that Keir Starmer won't meet him. That should have been in front of a podium outside Butte House or in the Parliament of Scotland. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom will not meet me, the First Minister of Scotland, when our industry is being destroyed by the actions of the British government. That's what should have happened. Not a press release to the Press Association and a bit of a complaint about, oh, he won't meet me. That's the action of, it's not the action of a leader. That's the best I can say.
Yeah. In fact, the ball probably made from oil products, as where the oil products went to make the strips, the football boots, the fertilizers that keep the grass going, that, you know, that runs the lights. Everything about that comes from the oil. It's just ridiculous. But, you know, instead of giving it, Alan, you know, this, please, sir, can I have more? You know, can he not be a bit more imaginative? We need to be more demanding.
Yeah, I mean, he could use the powers that he has just for sheer annoyance. I mean, take, for example, the Scotland office. let's change the name of the street to Vichy Street or Colonial Headquarters. Let's really annoy the life out of them. We have powers to do that. And it's annoyance, but makes a point that we are under the control of another country. I mean, but why would Starmer meet with John Swinney? I mean, he's only just a wee office boy. There's no respect from Westminster to any position within the Scottish Parliament. And why should there be? Name me one thing that a member of the Scottish National Party has changed in Westminster. And all the time they've been there. Nothing. I mean, you could argue that they brought down the Callaghan government, but that would be false. Because it was the Tories that brought them down. We all know that. And it was also the trade unions that brought them down at the time. But the Scottish Parliament, the Scottish National Party don't have the power in Westminster, and they have to realise that. They think they're big players down there, and they're not. They're laughed at all the time. Where they do have power is in the Scottish Parliament, restricted as it is. But you have to use the powers that you have to further the cause of Scottish independence. That's the only avenue we have at this present time. And we put as much pressure on them as possible. We play the dirty tricks with them. We make it as annoying as possible for them, and we just get under their skin. We make Scotland uncontrollable for Westminster.
Uncomfortable.
And we also promote English independence to everybody else down south. I keep saying to them, if you're sick and tired of us being subsidised, then go independence. Why did you vote for independence from the European Union? Because you didn't like subsidising them. So why is your government quite happy to subsidise us, demand independence from them? Let's get an independence movement operating in England. Reform say that they want to take their country back. Well, there's your opportunity. Go and get your people all together, independence for England, and I'll tell you, we will have Scotland supporting you 100%. We will not deny you a referendum, I promise. We will come out and we will campaign for you, if you like, because we believe in democracy. And we also believe in keeping more money in Scotland to take people out of Scotland, out of poverty, out of heat deprivation. We need the money that Scotland's sending down to England to support our own people. That's what John Swinney should be pushing, not begging Starmer for a meeting to discuss a budget that Swinney has no power over. So come on, let's get together, put independence front and foremost at the election in May. Because if we do that and we work as a team, like Eva said, Team Scotland, then we can free our nation in 2026. Now, there's one other thing that sort of sticks in the back of my throat, and it's Believe in Scotland have said that they've now got the £80,000 target, and they're now going to increase that target. Having that kind of money for campaigning is all very good, but what are you going to do with it? Are we going to see an itemised billing of what you're going to do, or is this £80,000 going to be pissed up against a wall doing nothing for the cause? Because I'll tell you, there's a lot of areas of this movement that can use £80,000 to get the message out to every single doorstep in this country and make sure in 2026 we're going with the information we need to get out the independent support.
Indeed. And one of those is Liberate Scotland. Techie, could you keep running that along the bottom where they can contact Liberate Scotland? Don't take it down. Keep it running the whole time. Thanks very much, Techie. And another thing, Techie, you put up for me this week, Eva, Jeremy Corbyn made a very rare appearance, but he was talking about Scottish, well, he wasn't talking quite about Scottish independence. He was talking about the rights of us to have a referendum or whatever. Techie, can you stick up that video of Jeremy Corbyn, please?
The demand is there to have a referendum, therefore that demand should be met and the referendum ought to be held. There's clearly an appetite and a demand for it, and that should be met. It's a simple democratic argument. If people want to have a referendum to decide on their own future, then they should have it. If you do the opposite, then you end up with the sort of nonsense they had in Spain of imprisoning people because they were trying to hold what was called an illegal referendum. The 1997-98 legislation, it didn't provide a mechanism that was clearly identified as Scottish in how you call a referendum. It is down to a UK government to legislate for it. And there should be a mechanism that people can actually trigger that themselves and not have to wait for a political judgment to be made by a UK government.
Pity Eva he didn't have that opinion when he was the leader of the Labour Party. They might have got elected on that occasion. But he's right. He's absolutely right.
He's talking about Scotland's right to decide, but how he couched it there was he was actually confirming that because there is no mechanism for the Scots to run what is recognised by Westminster and elsewhere just now as a referendum, that's confirmation that Scotland is a colony, because Scotland can't do anything unless it's in the gift of Westminster, is a translation, an interpretation of what Jeremy Corbyn just said. So that's a lesson for the people of Scotland if they want to think that Scotland is not a colony. You've just got that fellow confirming that we are. And I don't see what there is in his party, your party, for anybody who believes in independence for Scotland. Why would you think of joining him? Why would you think of supporting his party at all? What you should be doing is supporting people who want independence, nothing less. So I'm interested in his intervention, but I think that it's indicative of the fact that he needs more support in Scotland than he's currently got. So at the moment, he's saying the right things, hoping that the right people are listening to what he's saying, but he's clearly hedging his bets because he's not talking about supporting Scottish independence. He's talking in terms of supporting the right of the Scots to decide. And interestingly, your right to decide is also the strapline of the SNP for reasons that defy me. But your right to decide is done to attract people from both sides of the constitutional argument, when what we should be having is, as we've said, Team Scotland in the spirit of independence, because we know already that support for independence is actually in the majority. And that's why we shouldn't wait for Westminster to give us another referendum or grant us a referendum. We just create our own, and that's Holyrood 2026. As we've said often, and Lloyd often says, probably most weeks here, John Swinney could do that today. There is a pro-independence majority in the Scottish Parliament. If John Swinney wants Scotland to become an independent country, and if he wants the Scotland football team to be practising and training in an independent Scotland long before the World Cup takes place, then he should call that de facto referendum, that early Holyrood 26 election, within a matter of weeks.
Yeah, that's absolutely 100%, Lloyd. We could very well been doing that. Your party, again, I find it quite patronising. You say, well, we should give them, as if, they're our little plaything, but, I'm a good guy, and I agree. I think we should let them have a wee go at it. And they're all same as they've been patronising about Tuesday night. It was, yes, you can have a referendum. He didn't say he supported independence, and he was right. Anyone that's gone in there thinking that, I'll vote for them or I'll stand for them for independence, they're kidding themselves on.
Yeah, I mean, but what Eva said is absolutely correct. I mean, the key point in what Corbyn had to say was that Westminster has to legislate for this. There you go. Westminster must legislate for what the Scottish people have as a national right under the United Nations rules. But what bugs me mostly is when Corbyn appeared, as the wounded granddad, and he was getting this new party together, and there were a load of people who I would term the kind of old left of Scotland, who saw this as a positive thing, as something to move forward, which is why he gets talked about all the time. The likely traction that your party or Jeremy Corbyn's party or whatever the hell it's called when it eventually becomes a real party under the Electoral Commission, it has no real locus on Scotland at all. In fact, one of the things that I thought you were going to put up as Jeremy Corbyn's statement to the nation was the statement to the nation that he made, I think it was yesterday, on what I believe is called Trans Visibility or Trans Awareness Day, when he put out a little video saying that we all have to be really cognizant of the tragedy of the trans people and those that have been murdered and victimized over the past year. which frankly is rubbish, as we know. But that's Jeremy Corbyn getting involved in something that has wreaked havoc across political parties in Scotland, and particularly in our parliament, over the Gender Recognition Reform Bill. He's getting himself involved in our politics for his own benefit. But again, can somebody explain to me, why is it that we need a fourth or a fifth London-based party that supports trans rights activists, when in actual fact this country has rejected that? Do we need this? Why is it that there's so many people on the left in Scotland think that somehow, Jeremy and his white charger will come out of his allotment and save the country, when in actual fact everything tells us that he cannot maintain a clear, straightforward vision, that he had the enormous and extraordinary ability to get more votes for the Labour Party than Keir Starmer's ever had in his life, but successfully lose an election to the English Tories. Why is it that there's so many people in this country who are prepared to invest their time and their imagination on someone who, in reality, can bring nothing to the table? Because in the clip that we just showed, it makes very, very clear that Jeremy Corbyn is British through and through. And I've keep hearing people saying, oh, aye, but he was good on the Irish question. Was he? Exactly how good was he on the Irish question? Did Jeremy Corbyn advance the cause of Sinn Féin in any way whatsoever? No, he didn't. Did Ken Livingstone, another, darling of the lefty, did he advance the cause? No, he didn't. What actually happened was that the people of Northern Ireland and the people of the Nationalist Republican community, they achieved what they achieved through their own offices and through their own efforts, with no help whatsoever from the allotment man. I despair at some of my fellow countrymen, particularly some that I've known for many, many years in political circles, who see some kind of messiah in Jeremy Corbyn, when in actual fact, nearly every time he opens his mouth, he may be a nice man. I've never met him. And to be perfectly frank with you, being nice in politics, who cares? Are you any good at it? Have you got ideas? Will you advance the cause of the country? Will you advance the cause of the people? Will you eradicate poverty? Will you sort out housing? I don't hear him talking about any of this stuff, except in the broadest possible terms. I think if you were to ask him how much is a pan loaf in Morrison's in Edinburgh, he wouldn't be able to tell you. And frankly, that's how I want to judge my politicians. I want them to know what people have to deal with on a day-and-daily basis. And Corbyn is very clearly stated. And never forget, this is the other thing that I think dements me. He's a product of the English public school system. That's, him and Rory Stewart. You couldn't put a fag paper between the two of them with the attitudes that they actually have. Corbyn has nothing to give to us, and I'd rather we weren't even talking about him, to be honest with you.
He might not know the price of a pan loaf, but he would know the cost of a price of carrot seeds. There you go. I'm with Lloyd on this one, Alan. I'm sure that Jeremy Corbyn's a real damn decent man, and our friend Phil, who unfortunately can't be with us today, has said similar. He's met him and talked to him and said he's a very nice chap. But to me, he is, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I'm about to be disrespectful. He's a pound shop Tony Benn.
Definitely. I knew Tony, so he never couldn't have laced Tony's boots. But the problem with Corbyn is it's very easy to be a leader of a political party that has no chance of holding the reins of power. You can promise whatever you want and you can say whatever you want. Now, he says that he believes in democracy for Scotland. So why are you bringing your English party here interfering with Scottish politics? That's the first question. And he claims to be on the left, but he's one of these on the left that doesn't quite understand what the left means. I mean, he condemns the largening gap between rich and poor, but he'll refuse to support a universal percentage wage increase. So you have the one wage increase, which means the people at the higher level don't get as much money than the people at the lower level. You build them up, but you'll refuse to do that because of skilled people. They deserve a wee bit more. Well, nonsense. If you believe in the eradication of poverty, it doesn't matter what skill you've got. Everybody should be treated equal and nobody should be on starvation wages. It's as simple as that. But, I mean, if Jeremy is truly for Scottish democracy, then he should withdraw every single one of his candidates in Scotland and allow the people of Scotland to fight the election with Scottish parties. And that goes for the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, the Liberal Party, and the Reform Party. You have no business in Scottish politics. If you want to run in Scotland, then register as a Scottish political party, which means you get no money from your English masters to fight your campaigns. You get no assistance from your English masters for your campaigns. But what it does mean is you may be able to have policies of your own that would benefit Scotland and not the policies being pushed by your English masters at Westminster and the City of London. Because that is what is happening at this present time. There is no such thing as the leader of the Labour Party in Scotland. The leader of the Labour Party in Scotland, and I know you think it's Netanyahu, Rory, but officially it's Keir Starmer.
Really? You
same
sure?
with the Tories. Same with the Tories. It is the leader of Westminster parties that is your leader. The ones who are in Scotland are branch managers, nothing else. They have no right to have any policies of their own. That's why when Labour brought in the PFIs, it was English Labour that pushed that forward, and Scottish Labour went, yes, sir. When they brought in tuition fees, remember that? Scottish Labour went, yes, sir, we will follow suit. And that's why if any of these parties get elected, you could say goodbye to every single benefit Alex Salmond fought his days to put into place in the Scottish Parliament. You say bye-bye to the mitigation of every single Tory policy that has been hurting the people of England. They will now start hurting the people of Scotland. And if it's reform, say goodbye to your National Health Service. Say goodbye to your welfare state, because that is the reason they're wanting rid of the European Convention on Human Rights. It's got nothing to do with foreigners coming into this country. It's to do with getting rid of workers' rights, decent pensions, fair wages, and making sure people are out of poverty. They do not want to have that responsibility within the Parliament. They want to be able to do whatever they want to then fund their rich friends and put money back into their pockets at the expense of the most vulnerable in our country. That's the reason they want to do that. So come on, Scotland, get together. Only vote Scottish parties in 2026.
I hear what you say about, they should come as independent Scottish parties, but I think I would go a bit further. I mean, we've been dealing with the Electoral Commission, and they can be when it suits them. Very, very detailed, very pernickety. Yet they allow these parties, English registered parties, to call themselves, because it's an accounting division, they allow them to say they're the Scottish Labour Party when they don't exist. And if these people believe so much in the union, then why don't you call yourself on the ballot paper the British Labour Party, the British Conservative and Unionist Party, the British Liberal Party? Why not have the courage of your convictions? If you lie about your own name, even your true identity, what else are you hiding and lying about? It's my opinion. They're liars when they won't even tell you their proper name. But I slightly digress. That's my rant over, Eva. We like a wee rant, as you know. We rant. Techie, this week, the clock's about to beat us, folks. I want to get a couple of things in before we go. The latest polls this week, Techie, could you stick them up, the latest polling? There we go. Reform are still pressing ahead. The Greens are still in second place. The Tory and Labour Party are neck and neck for third and fourth place. It's really, I never thought I'd see this day. But the fact is, Eva, that reform, despite anything that's going on, I mean, there's councillors resigning every other day. There's one getting done for, is it 20 years this week or something, for spying. And still, they're out in front. Is this because people are disillusioned, or are our friends in the media, the guys in the grey suits, at the manipulation?
Probably a bit of both, but it's interesting in that regard to look at two recent by-elections. There's one down in, is it Long Ashton, which was held just the other day, and the Greens won it.
Somerset, I think it is. Have you got it there, Techie?
The turnout was 32%. But there was another in Dumfries and Galloway yesterday. And for that, there you go. If you have a look at that, you'll see Reform got the most first past the post, or the most first preference votes. But it was the Tory who was elected, I think, at the 7th round. The turnout for that one in Dumfries and Galloway was 34%. So on each of these occasions, twice as many people stayed at home and didn't vote than actually did vote. And that's the problem. Reform are getting their voters out. You saw that the Greens are getting theirs out. There's a lesson there for the people of Scotland, particularly those who want independence. It's trite to say it, but it's perfectly obvious. If you don't get out and vote, you run the risk of letting these people in to the Scottish Parliament next year, as well as into local authorities when there are by-elections, if apathy continues like this. It's incumbent on politicians or would-be politicians to tell people honestly what they stand for and to give them hope, but to give them an understanding that they have policies in place in their manifesto that are actually deliverable, and they will do what it says upon the tin. And I think that the problem that, if we turn it into a totally Scottish context as we want to, the problem for Scotland just now is the ruling party has lost its way. It's lost its faith in its raison d'etre, and it's lost its ability to deliver its raison d'etre because it's lost at least 20% of the independence movement. We say this week in and week out. The SNP is not the independence movement, but the independence movement needs people who presently support the SNP, and probably also needs capable people who remain within the SNP as members, but I don't for the time being include within that the current leadership, because they're the weak link. So if we want to dodge the problems that the Reform will undoubtedly visit upon us, if we do not want in Scotland repetition of the tomfoolery, and I'm being as polite as I can, delivered by the Greens over the course of the past few years, then we need to have A, a united independence movement, and or B, candidates that you can trust, that you can look in the whites of their eyes, you can ask them what it is that they stand for, and you can ask them how they're going to deliver it. That's what Scotland needs: honest politicians and people that are accountable and people that have ability and skill, and they're there to do a job. And the job is only to deliver independence and get Scotland up and running again. All of that can be done next year, but it'll only be done if people come out and vote. So if you believe in Scottish independence, offer your services as an activist, whether it's delivering leaflets, it's canvassing, it's talking to other people, it's attending fundraisers, it's writing letters. Our country can be free next year if those of us who want it to happen join together and make it happen. But we have to do it, and we have to start today. It will not happen by itself, and it will not happen if people stay at home and don't vote, or go and make a mistake at the ballot box and vote for people who do not have Scotland's best interests and the future of Scotland as their priority. And I would submit that Reform, and unfortunately the Greens, are absolutely in that category. The future betterment of the majority of the people of Scotland is not the priority of the leaders of either of these parties.
I agree wholeheartedly. Well said, Eva. One thing here that I noticed, Lloyd, on this, I would say, Reform and Greens are hitting the front in opinion polls. And it goes back to, people get fed up with the Tories and they wanted them out, and they were so distraught with the way the country was run. And I talk about for the whole of the UK. Labour's the answer. And they went to Labour and they quickly found out, no, it's not. And it seems to be, it's a desperation vote that's got Reform in front. We've tried all the others, it didn't work. I maintain it's not the parties that are the problem, it's the entire system of governance. But one of the ones was complaining about the Dumfries and Galloway by-election. There's a certain irony in that. They were complaining how they'd got the first preference votes, but they lost the seat, and it was ridiculous. But the unionists put that in place, actually, to thwart the SNP, and it's come back and bitten them in the bum.
That's, yeah, I can see how that could be interpreted that way. It's not quite my interpretation. Two things I'd like to say. I find it very, very interesting that from more or less nowhere, the Green Party under the magnificent leadership of Zach Polanski, who does adverts for the national newspaper, and the Reform Party, whose presentation or representation rather on the BBC and the mainstream media outstrips by far the number of elected members that it ever has had, that they are the two that are at the top of the polls for a United Kingdom election. How has this come to pass? Now, yes, I accept there's anger. You have to accept that people want to give the mainstream parties a bit of a slap. But you can't discount the fact that Polanski has only been the leader of the Green Party for, 5-6 months. But suddenly they've gone from their standard 10% to be flying into second place in opinion polls. And then you have the circumstances of Reform, whose members and leaders have been on, for instance, Question Time on the BBC 10 times more often than the leaders or the representatives of either Plaid Cymru or of the Scottish National Party. Now, you know, there's the power of the propaganda is huge, especially in the mainstream media, and it shows itself in these elections. As to the voting system, we have a local government voting system that was brought in under the aegis of Jack McConnell when he was the First Minister. And clever Jack thought this was his way of marginalising the Liberal Democrats. On the one hand, the Liberal Democrats wanted a form of PR in local government. They were also rising in local government at that time. It is 20 odd years ago, so bear with me here. So Jack brought in the multi-member wards and PR for local government elections, thereby absolutely destroying the Labour Party's hegemonious grip, total and complete grip on local government in Scotland. And effectively, that at that point, that was the point where the Labour Party in Scotland no longer could apply the level of patronage that it had done for the previous 50 years, and it began to fight internally with itself. Because instead of just, you know, turn up, vote, as we said on many occasions, you know, you'd vote for a monkey in a red rosette. Suddenly, that certainty was all gone with the multi-member wards. But there's another serious element here. The creation of multi-member wards has divorced the councillor from the electorate. They're not as identifiable because they cover a much, much bigger area. You know, I mean, my council ward is nearly 40,000 people. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. A 4-member ward with nearly, I mean, it wasn't 40,000 when it was first set up, but it is nearly 40,000 people now because houses get built, people move in, move out. All these things are kind of variables. But what it's done is it's removed the responsibility that individual councillors, and I'm sure Eva will know this, having been a councillor herself, you were known in your ward because your ward was 2,500 to 3,000, maybe max 4,000 people. It meant that they had contact with you, you had contact with them, and you would pay if you didn't do what was required for the people in that ward. When you extend it and make it nearly the same size as a parliamentary ward, the same rules don't apply anymore. And all I see in that opinion poll or the result of that election in Stranraer and the Whins is the influence of the 6 o'clock news talking up the Green Party, talking up Reform, and the few people that went out to vote have just proved that. Because where were the Reform or the Greens in that particular ward at the last council election? Absolutely nowhere. So all we're seeing is the influence of what's comfortable for the media, and it's perverting our politics. And we need to do something about it. And one of the most important things is we need to keep reminding people that Zach Polanski, who's a nutcase as just as much as Patrick Harvey is, his Green Party is not the Scottish Green Party. They share many ideas, they share many stupidities as well, but they are not the same thing. Unfortunately, the same thing's happened right across Europe. If you're called Green, then it's a universal. So people hear Green, they think that's the same as the Greens that they've got. And as a result, the Greens in England, the Greens in Scotland actually have a symbiotic relationship that's created by the media, not by themselves. And people have to wake up to the fact that the Greens are not the cuddly folk that we thought they were, as the Gender Recognition Reform Bill proved, and the Deposit Return Scheme debacle completely and utterly proved. Not to mention the fact that nobody's allowed to burn wood in their houses anymore. They are an absurd organisation. They need to go.
I'm going to be quite a wee bit controversial here, Alan. And as we're running out of time, I can do that and then run away. But I wrote a blog way back in 2017, and it based it on a film I once called Via Rides. It was about Pancho Villa, the revolutionary. And he was outside this village, and the Federales troops were in, and they were getting ready to start hanging some of the local villagers because they were sympathetic to the revolution and to Pancho Villa. And as they started hanging them, he didn't into the village. He had all his troops there, and they didn't go in. And one of his underlings said, "But boss, if we don't go in, they'll start killing them, And he said, if you go in there, you'll be a hero. They'll love you." And he said, "They already love me, but they don't hate the enemies of Mexico enough." And he waited till a few more were killed, and then he rode in and got the business. And all the men from the village left and joined his army for the revolution. A long story, but the mitigation, I'm wondering, it might be controversial, but if Reform get in, it might be one of the best things ever for Scottish independence, because they will wreck the joint beyond recognition, and it may be enough. So, because a lot of Scots people might love the thought of Scotland, but they don't hate the enemies of Scotland enough.
It's funny you should say that, because the more and more I think about Reform and what's happening, the more and more I think back to the people of Germany in 1933, where they had a political party who blamed all the ills of the nation on the poor, on the foreigners, when it was the people with the money that was causing all the bother. That party was called the Nazi Party. They went on and were elected. Let's not forget this. The Nazi Party were elected by the German people because they were lied to. They were manipulated. And look at the dangers of history. Look what happened when they got in. Reform are no different. They are an evil party with an evil leader. A man who talks about these foreigners coming here, and yet the man who leads the Reform Party is a French nationalist. He has a French passport and citizenship. That's how... he just gets right on my bloody nerves.
Hypocrite.
Yes. But I mean, Eva's right about the voting, that it's important that people come out to vote. Because if they don't come out to vote, that's how these parties get elected. But because of the way the Scottish polling system works, is you've got to vote wisely. If you're voting SNP 1 and SNP 2, then what you're saying to Nigel is, which seat do you want and how many do you want? Because that's how Reform is going to get votes and seats as a consequence. So if you really, really do not want these unionists, and in particular Reform, elected to Scottish Parliament, then you've got to make up your mind if you want to vote for the SNP in the constituency, when you have a Liberate Scotland candidate in the constituency, which will then allow you to vote for SNP on the list. That may get you an SNP list seat. But if you're voting SNP on the constituency and then on the list, you have absolutely no chance of getting any seats on that list. And that is more likely going to go to the Reform Party. That's how our system works. These parties get in through the back door, not because they're popular, but because the voting of the public. They don't understand the system. So you've got a choice in 2026. We will have as many candidates standing on constituencies. So if you want the SNP to get less seats, then you have to vote for Liberate Scotland on the constituency, because that will then not affect the SNP list vote. Or you can vote SNP on the constituency, but you will then have to vote Liberate Scotland on the list, because Liberate Scotland will then pick up the seats on the list, because the SNP won't. Please do your homework on the list. Don't allow Reform to come through the back door, because it's not a kick in the teeth for the SNP you're going to give. It's not a kick in the teeth for anything else but our NHS and every other service that the Reform Party will sell off and destroy. They will destroy Scotland. And we mentioned earlier on this programme about the football. You will have no Scottish football team for the World Cup or the Euros after 2026 if Reform gets in, because Reform will destroy everything that is Scottish and put a British Union Jack on every single thing.
Cheers. Folks, we've run out of time. Just a quick reminder to you folk, you can see it running along the bottom. The fundraiser next Friday up there in Stirling in the King Robert Hotel. You know, come along, 20 quid a ticket. It'll be a good night. There'll be some raffles. There'll be some good people to meet, some good laughs, some good music. And it's all towards a good cause. And don't forget that. And as we're leaving, I think, Techie, we should leave the way we started, with a joyous moment. Let's stick up that video as we exit. Till we see you all again. May you and yours take care and enjoy these goals all again.
With the tricks and McTominay! Have you ever seen anything like that on the biggest stage of all? Oh, that looked like it might well have been inside the box there as he marches back onto the pitch and gives the penalty. Denmark level. Comes on the and it comes. Ferguson's header given away, but it breaks to Tierney! History! History for Scotland and Kieran Tierney! They've given it away. Here's McLean. He's going to shoot. Is that going to
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.